But whatever euphemism you want to use, hell froze over, the apocalypse is nigh, the end is near, whatever you want to use, it must be coming because I'm actually interested in building a blue-white commander with Niko Light of Hope from Duskmourn, who does a little bit of a neat trick as a cloning commander. So let's take a look at him now and see what we can do with this new commander that's kind of unique. So this is Niko, Light of Hope. For 2, a white and a blue. It's a 3/4 legendary creature, human wizard. That says when it enters, create 2 shard tokens. And then you can pay 2 and tap and exile one of your non-legendary creatures. The shards become a copy of that creature until the beginning of the next end step, and you get to return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of that next end step. Now, normally blue-white is much more of a control color combination, and it's something that I really don't like playing all that often. But what I like about Niko here is that it's not really a control commander, but it's more of a mid-range one. We're going to be flickering our non-legendary creatures to make the shards that Niko creates into copies of whatever we're flickering. So, of course, we're also going to be running things that will get more ETBs off of this. We're going to be flickering Niko as well to get more shards off of this to turn into creatures later. So what are we going to be doing with this deck? Well, let's start with a second source of the shard tokens with the original Niko as a planeswalker with Niko Eris. For X white blue blue, you get a legendary planeswalker Niko with starting loyalty of 3 that says when it enters, create X shard tokens. +1 up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn, and whenever that creature deals damage this turn, return it to its owner's hand. -1, it deals 2 damage to target tapped creature for each card you've drawn this turn, or -1, create a shard token. The nice part about the original Niko is it scales up as the game goes on, so the more mana you can dump into the X, the more shards you can create to work with our commander's ability. Now, the shards themselves, I haven't really talked much about because I haven't gone into their background. They count as enchantments. You can pay 2 and sack them to scry 1 and draw a card. But for the most part, we're not wanting to go ahead and sacrifice these things. We want to keep them around so we can turn them into creatures to threaten our opponents. Now, since these shards are tokens, we are going to need to get some doubling action into the deck, such as Anointed Procession, which doubles up our token creation. So every time a shard is created, we get 2 of them. Now, depending on what you have access to, you could slot in Mondrak over Procession, but do not try to use O'Hare Talk because it is restricted to creature tokens only and will not affect the shards. But not only can we use token doublers, we can also use ETB doublers as well, since Niko's shard creation, both the creature and the planeswalker form, are ETBs. So let's put in something like Panharmonicon and Virtue of Knowledge. Each of these are going to double up our shard creation plus any other ETBs that we slot into the deck. But that also means we can put a brand new card into the deck from Duskmourn in the form of one of the doors, Mirror Room and Fractured Realm. Mirror Room on its side is 2 in a blue, I can't talk tonight, that says whenever you unlock this door, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except for it's a reflection in addition to its other creature types, which can come in handy at times. Or Fractured Realm, which is the part that fits here, is 5 blue blue enchantment room. If a triggered ability of a permanent you control triggers, it triggers an additional time. So mainly we want the Fractured Realm side because it gives us an additional version of Virtue of Knowledge and Panharmonicon to work with. But the Mirror Realm part is very handy for making a quick token that we need off of one of our ETB creatures or something of that nature as well. Now, as I said a little bit ago, we're not only going to use Niko to flicker targets to turn our shards into creatures, we're also going to be flickering Niko as well to get more shards, and that's where this little package here comes into play with Teleportation Circle, Conjurer's Closet, Thassa, Deep Dwelling, and Soul Herder. Each of these cards here trigger at the beginning of the end step, allowing us to flicker in either Niko or any of our other ETB creatures for more benefits and then more shards off of Niko as well. Our next grouping here is going to be Abuelo, Ancestral Echo, Ephemerate, OG the Exquisite Blade, and Salvation Swan. The rest of this flicker package doesn't really fit into that other category, but we have several uses in the deck here. Abuelo can be activated to flicker Niko. OG triggers when we do a couple of spells to get that flicker there, and Ephemerate and the Salvation Swan are one-shot wonders that can be used to get our flicker on, with the Swan having the added benefit of being able to put a flying counter on our non-flyers. So those are our ways to make the shards, but what are we going to actually turn those shards into? Well, we have some creatures here that do some fun things either on the attack when they deal damage, or just some good ETB creatures that are going to benefit the deck for flickering them anyways. So I'm going to include things like Claim Jumper, Elite Spellbinder, Solemn Simulacrum. These things actually, you flicker them, Then when the original comes back into play, you're going to get a trigger off of them. And then you have the original stuff. Claim Jumper's got a pretty good body attached to it. It's a 3/3 by itself, so that's a pretty respectable body. Elite Spellbinder's a 3/1 flyer, can fly over and hit. Solemn Simulacrum, if the shard versions would die in combat, then you're going to get to go ahead and draw some cards. And I'm also going to include 2 of the new Overlords in Overlord of the Flood Pits and Overlord of the Mistmoors. As they come into play, you're going to get their triggers, but as well as attacks. And since they're not legendary, each of the shards can then turn into a copy of them. So for every shard version of the Flood Pits Overlord, you're going to get 2 cards and discard a card. And for every version of the Mistmoors Overlord that swings, you're going to get an additional 2/1 token to go with it. I'm also going to include things that when enchantments come into play. So as the shards get generated, we have Gremlin Tamer, which gives us Gremlin tokens. I'm going to give us some unblockable creatures in Blighted Agent and Invisible Stalker. The agent has the ability to poison our opponents, and then Invisible Stalker is just hexproof, so it keeps them from being able to be targeted out. But you can do some fun tricks with some untapped things, which I'm going to talk about more later with these unblockable creatures. I'm also going to include Battle Angels of Tyr. When it deals damage, you get the triggers off of it. Same with Ancient Gold Dragon. You get a dice rolls, and if you turn all your shards into an Ancient Gold Dragon, you're going to get multiple triggers all at once. We're also going to include some other creatures to go ahead and turn into the shards, like Lionheart Glimmer from the set. It gives a +1/+1 to each attack whenever this thing attacks. Same thing with Warren War Leader, which does the same kind of thing for us. But if you turn all your shards into like the Glimmer or the War Leader, you're going to have a bunch of massive Anthem effects going on. We also have Silent Hall Creeper from the new set, which does give us another unblockable creature, but it also has some bonus modes attached to it, which do get reset because then they become new copies of the shards each time you transform it. So you get to redo the modes that are on there if you want to redo them. Plus, if you blink the original Hall Creeper, its modes get reset as well. We also have Enduring Curiosity, which is the coastal piracy on legs, is what it is. But you can flash this in, you can flicker it out, and then turn all your stuff into Enduring Curiosities, which then hit, and you get more cards, and you'll get a card for each copy of itself that was created with the shards. I'm also going to include Patched Plaything. This thing is actually really good. It's a 4/3 double striker for 3 that it enters with negative counters on it, but the shard versions are already in play, so you don't have to put the counters on them. So then what you can do is take Niko, do one of the unblockable creatures, swing, they get through, you untap Niko, and then Niko goes ahead and blinks out one of the Patch Plaything. And then all of a sudden, your stuff is a bunch of 4/3 double strikers that can just smash your opponent in the face. And they've already gotten past in blocks, so there's nothing they can do about it other than trying to instant speed kill your stuff to stop you from doing it. And then a little package that kind of works well with the shards themselves, especially once we start turning them into creatures and we start flickering stuff in and out of the game. And so let's start with a new card from the set, Dollmaker's Shop and Porcelain Gallery. It's another one of the rooms. One side for 1 and a white gives you an enchantment room that says whenever one or more non-toy creatures you control attacks, you create a 1/1 toy. And then Porcelain Gallery is 4 white, and it says creatures you control have base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. Well, the big thing here for us is the Porcelain Gallery. Once we turn the shards into creatures, everything will just suddenly get large with this thing down and unlocked. The front half isn't bad either, and it will help boost the creature count, but the gallery here is the all-star. I'm also going to include a copy of Preston the Vanisher. With all the flickering this deck is going to be doing, Preston is going to trigger a lot. And that means a lot of 0/1 copies of many of our ETB creatures, netting us more and more entering triggers, as well as just, an on-the-fly ability to use an exile off of Preston if we get enough of those copies. And since the shards are actually enchantments, we're going to go ahead and throw in a copy of Hallowed Haunting, because that means, a few flickers, you get a Hallowed Haunting online pretty quickly for that first line, giving the vigilance and flight. And then the second part, while not the biggest concern, is a nice bonus to get a few extra spirits here and there. And then, as I said, there's also going to be a little package to help us untap Niko to do the dumb little tricks, such as a Fetto Alchemist, Puppeteer, Mage Right Stone, Shore Up, and Teferi Who Slows the Sunset. All these cards are meant to untap Niko at instant speed to do dumb little tricks. Like I was saying before, say you make the creatures unblockable with one of your unblockable creatures. You swing, you get past the point where the blocking's been declared. They can't block before damage is dealt. You can then blink something else. I don't know what you want to blink. One of your creatures that is either bigger or has a cool like damage trigger attached to it or whatever. And then you're able to turn them all into that. Like my favorite play with this is to make stuff unblockable, swing before damage, turn them all into the 4/3 double striking doll from the new set, and all of a sudden they have a bunch of double striking 4/3s in their face. So you could all of a sudden take somebody's life total by half or more out of the blue, and it's very surprising. So that's the main thrust of the deck. The rest of the deck is actually just, removal, protection spells for Niko, those kind of things that make the deck tick. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. What would you do to this deck? What would you add to it? What would you take away from it? I'm all ears. I want to hear what you think. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.